Welcome to Joyfully Unstoppable, the podcast for women who are ready to lead boldly, live lightly, and reclaim their joy. Whether you're leading a team, a classroom, a boardroom, or your own big, beautiful life, I am so glad you found us. I'm your host, Becky Ham, leadership coach, speaker, and founder of Women Lead Well. After years of high-level leadership, I discovered that success doesn't have to come at the cost of your peace, your values, or your well-being. Each week, we'll explore what it means to lead joyfully, sustainably, and authentically, even in a world that tells you to hustle harder and prove your worth. You carry a lot. Let's help it feel lighter. Y'all, today I am so excited to welcome my very first guest on the Joyfully Unstoppable podcast, Elissa Zylbershlag, founder and CEO of WorkWise Labs, a company dedicated to helping managers feel more confident in the workplace. A natural educator, facilitator, and relationship builder, Elissa has spent over 20 years providing professional development and leadership support across industries, including leadership roles within the Anti-Defamation League, the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, and the New Jersey Division on Civil Rights. Elissa is often called upon to provide professional coaching for managers when they lack confidence and consult with organizations when they need a fresh perspective, when teams face challenges, or when new departments are being built from the ground up. She has a proven track record of developing successful programs and fostering strong, cohesive teams. Elissa, welcome to the Joyfully Unstoppable podcast.
Thanks, Becky. I'm so happy to be here.
It is awesome to have you here. So, Elissa, you're the founder and CEO of WorkWise Labs, and you've built the next level leadership program specifically for new and newish managers. Can you share your journey with our listeners? What led you to create this program, and what do you most want leaders to gain from it?
Well, I created the program as part of WorkWise Labs because there's not a lot out there that really focuses on new and new-ish leaders. There are a lot of leadership programs, but when we think about those moments of getting that first job where you're in a managerial role, and I don't know if you've had that experience, but what happens a lot is imposter syndrome and fear and worry. And it's like people don't understand what it really means to be a leader. So, my first leadership role was in 2005. And as I was thinking back to it for this, in preparation for this podcast, I was just thinking about all of the things that have happened to me over the years. And I've learned so many lessons. And each lesson that I learned was because I made a mistake or because I had some huge struggle or because I was super disappointed about something. And in and of itself, that is a lesson, right? That is like the first lesson that any new or new-ish leader or person really should know is that mistakes, struggles, disappointments, they are there to teach us. And those are the moments when everything's going great and everyone's like happy, these moments are wonderful, but that's not where you're learning. That's not where you're growing. That's where you're kind of just gliding along and enjoying the fruits of your labor. So I really just think that those moments of disappointment and mistakes and struggles, that's where you really learn. And so that's why I created the Next Level Leadership program, because this is a program where you get to kind of delve into all of those things.
Yeah, and Elissa, I think this is so important. I was thinking back on my first probably formal leadership role was as chair of the faculty council at my university. And then the formal leadership role where I was a actual supervisor, where I managed people, was when I became dean at the college. and no training to chair the faculty council, even though I was herding the cats and leading an agenda, setting a vision, leading an agenda, all the things that you do as a leader with peers, which is a particularly challenging part of leadership because there is no formal authority structure. I just had a chair and I had a particular position I was elected to, but I had no actual uh, influence over the members. They were going to do what they were going to do. And so I learned a ton through failure, absolutely. And some anxiety on my part because you go to that role wanting to do a good job and wanting to help fellow faculty and the university as a whole. And then when I transitioned to become dean, I had my mandatory supervisor training. And so how do you do time cards and what is the process if somebody isn't performing? How do you document that from an HR perspective so the HR side of the house can take formal disciplinary actions against people who aren't meeting standard? But that's not real. That's a tiny little sliver of what actual leadership is. That
Yeah.
isn't. How do you have, in my instance, highly experienced professionals? How do you hold them accountable in a way that's not condescending, that is collaborative, that builds the team and then moves the team forward? And again, from my specific experience, how then do you institute some fundamental change within that organization, within my part of the organization? Because we had to change because we had grown kind of calcified.
Yeah.
And so leadership is far more complex than the mandatory training that new leaders might get when they come into a role, if they get any training at all.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And you mentioned two things that I want to touch on, Becky. The first is this anxiety that you felt. Um, you know, my daughter struggles from anxiety. She's 18 and she is a go-getter. I mean, this girl, she will do so much. I'm so excited to see what she's going to do and be in the world. And she's had this anxiety her whole life. And I always wanted to try to like fix it. And one of the things that I realized as a mom and then comes into my professional life is that anxiety, within reason, anxiety can really be your friend. It pushes you to do things. It has pushed my daughter. I've watched it. She always gets her schoolwork done like well in advance, and that's the anxiety. And even though it's not healthy for you, it's not good, right? But there are some benefits to having a little bit of anxiety because it keeps you on track, it pushes you forward, and you can use it to your advantage. So, of course, anxiety within reason and moderation, everything in moderation, including moderation. And so anxiety, that's the first thing I wanted to say. And then the second thing, when you were talking about being a leader and having to deal with people. I mean, that's the hard part of leadership, right? You can Google like strategy, how to have a strategic planning session. You can ask ChatGPT for a whole list of everything, like on paper, what you need to do. That's all out there. But what leadership really comes down to is people and dealing with the different personalities and you know I'm going to say something that's a little bit controversial, but that's okay because I really do believe it. It's like when you're and I want all new leaders to know this. When you are struggling to manage a person, it's usually you, the leader, that's the problem.
Mhm.
You're just not doing something right. Most likely, it's communication. Effective communication is not just saying the words. Effective communication is making sure that you're saying the words so that they are being heard by that person. And in order to know how that person needs to hear those words, you need to have a relationship with them because you need to know what they need. And you then need to make modifications in yourself as the leader to make sure that you're meeting that person where they are. And I think a lot of leaders think it's about, well, this is my team, so this is going to be run the way I want it to be run. And there are a lot of choices and a lot of decisions that you make as a leader. And those are, the direction and you are building the path for the team. But changing yourself as the leader to meet the needs of your team and the people's needs because they're all humans. That's what's really, really key that a lot of people miss. And in a way, it's kind of freeing, to know that you don't have to change another person because the truth is, you can't really. You can only change yourself. So knowing that changing yourself can help your team, that's actually kind of freeing knowing that it's you that's the problem. It's you that can make the change. And, it requires vulnerability, it requires self awareness, it requires humility to do that kind of work. And it's hard, but that is like the key, I think. And that's something I really want new leaders to know.
Yeah, and I think this point about communication and how oftentimes we think we're better communicators than we are. This is true. I would say this is true not only of new leaders, I think it's equally true of experienced leaders. But it was definitely a growth curve for me when I was new to leadership that I had this assumption that if I communicated it, then it was received. And I didn't
Right.
have to continuously communicate the priorities or the timelines or the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Um, and so I got pretty frustrated the first year or two. I was in informal and formal leadership role because it just took me a while to figure out nobody is trying to blow me off. That's not who my team is amazing. They just have their own list of priorities, some of which are related to their role in the organization, and some of which just related to the lives that they are leading. Frankly, more the higher priorities are their personal priorities, and then the work priorities are the work priorities. I have to be able to connect with them both in a relational way, but also with the cadence so that I am communicating what matters organizationally so that they want to hear it. Two, that it actually sinks in. And then three, that they remember it. Because I thought if I just said it, they would remember. And no, they do, of course not. I didn't, right? And then I would think back to the number of times my boss would tell me something. I'd be like, oh, yeah, oops, they said that. And then I would have to catch up to where they are.
Right.
So, this point of communication, I think, is so important. Key for leaders or the women that I work with is doing it in a way that is authentic to who you are. And so,
Mhm.
yes, we all grow, we all change. You say that the leader is the problem, maybe, but it is still, we have to find a way that we have that relationship that is true to who we are and that we don't sell ourselves out and just twist ourselves into a pretzel because we have to communicate differently to this person and then differently to that person and then do another thing over here because then we're jumping to meet their bar, which is fine to do in life, but we set our bar, right? We determine
Yes, of
who we are.
course. We
Yeah.
have to have our boundaries. We have to have our limits. We have to have the things that are true to us. And authentic leadership is a very big part of the work that I do and the work that I bring to my clients. And, being confident is about being authentic because
Yeah.
when you are not being true to who you are, you know, how can you be confident? Right? It makes me
Right.
think actually, it's like speaking truth to power. I had a boss um, who came in who was new in the organization and I had been there for many years. And you develop relationships, you have friendships. And I had a colleague, a peer who was running another department, and she had a problematic employee, and we would talk about it a lot and what she could change to how she could change to
Mhm.
help this employee. And there were a lot of issues. And he came into me one of his first days there, and he was like, I have a really great idea. We should move this employee I was thinking to move this employee into your department. And I knew all the things that had gone on, right? And I had to make a decision in that moment. Like, how was I going to deal with this? Because he's coming in this new environment. He has no idea. And I took a risk and I was authentic with him. And I said, listen, we all have a lot of relationships that have been built over the years. And I know about this employee and I know the struggles that this employee has. And I don't think that this employee would be right for my department because XYZ. Um, and I kind of called him out on what he was doing. And that was very authentic to me, but in a kind way.
Right.
I needed to put up my boundaries, right? And say, like, you got to be real with me. I'm going to be real with you. And it actually ended up being a really great relationship. And the great relationships that I've had with my bosses have been the ones where I have spoken truth to power. I have been vulnerable. I have been the one that said, like, hey, oh, that job in 2005, that first job, that boss, he screamed at me in a public meeting.
Mm.
And afterwards, I went and I was there like 2 weeks. Like, I didn't know, and I went in afterwards and I said, I was wrong and I didn't have the right information, or I don't even know what it was. And I said to him, and don't yell at me like that in front of everybody. That was incredibly embarrassing for me. And I was vulnerable and I was direct. I ended up having the best relationship with him. And it's like these bosses and being a boss, you want your team to be able to come to you and to say those things, but you also have to create that
Right.
environment, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. When you are the one in charge, you have to
Yes.
be safe for them to come and unvarnished and just tell you professionally, but tell you what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I tell clients of mine when they're receiving feedback is to not respond right away, to just say, thank you for telling me. I want to process and I want to think about it and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. But thank you for telling me. It kind of takes the pressure off of having to come up with some amazing response right away.
Right. Well,
And
and when you get that feedback, particularly if it's not the glowing feedback we all want to get from our bosses, you're going to feel some kind of way when you're hearing it, and so not being in a position where you feel the need to then respond because you don't want to sound defensive and you certainly don't want to get emotional if you can avoid it. And so I think that's a great tip to just, I'm going to receive it now. I'll come back
yeah.
and we can talk about next steps.
And it's any feedback. So whether you're getting it from your boss, whether you're getting it from one of the people on your team and you're the boss, whether you're getting it from a colleague who's giving you some sort of feedback, any feedback that we get, it can be a little bit jarring.
Mhm.
When we receive that feedback, and that's the moment, right? That's that moment that I was talking about before. It's like pause, take it in, listen to it. And what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with that information?
That's right. Yeah, because there's always an opportunity there. Even if it doesn't come, even if it's a poorly framed feedback, which can happen. People give you feedback and the message is good, but the way the message was delivered hits you sideways, right? So
Yes.
giving yourself space to get down to the kernel of the opportunity for growth.
Yeah. And even if you disagree with it, I have one of my most popular. I also do team building workshops, and one of my most popular team building workshop is on self awareness and the way that we think about self awareness. Tasha Eurich, who is a researcher on self awareness, she's also an author. She wrote a book called Insight, and she defines self awareness as the ability to see ourselves clearly, to understand who we are, how others see us, and how we fit into the world. And a lot of people think about self awareness only about what I think and what I know about myself and being clear on my thoughts. But self-awareness is very much about understanding how the world sees you. So I've kind of likened this idea of self-awareness, both internal self-awareness and external self-awareness, as Tasha Eurich calls it, to the mirror and the portrait. So the mirror is looking in that mirror, it's seeing your values, your passions, your aspirations, how you fit into the world. And that is the idea of self awareness that's out there. And sometimes you look in that mirror and you see yourself so clearly. Sometimes it's a funhouse mirror and you don't really see yourself, you're not seeing yourself so clearly. And then the portrait represents this external or public self awareness. And this is about seeing how others see us and our impact on the world. And it's about how our actions and our beliefs and our values impact other people. And you can see the portrait through feedback. That's one of the ways that you see the portrait that other people have painted of you. And sometimes that portrait is beautiful and you love what you see on the canvas. And sometimes it's really ugly. And you may not agree with the portrait that's been painted. But the fact that that portrait is out there can inform you on your impact on the world and on others. And it's really important to see that portrait. So even if the feedback that you're receiving, you don't agree with it, somebody out there is thinking that.
Hmm.
So you put that out. So what are you going to do to change that portrait for future people?
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting about that metaphor is absolutely we put that out, and then people perceive us through the lens of their own stories, their own history. And so
Right.
in that portrait is you and what you are sharing with the world and how you show up in your energy and your words and how you make people feel and all of that. And also the individuals who you are in relationship with or who interact with you, what they are bringing to the conversation too, right? And
Yeah.
so it gives you that really full perspective because maybe I've had a toxic boss. And so when I'm interacting with you and you say one thing that reminds me of something my toxic boss had said to me, and then I'm no longer looking at you, Elissa. I'm looking at
Right.
you through the lens of toxicity and assuming that's going to be there. And so
Correct.
that becomes part of your portrait, not
Right.
because of what have you sent out, but because of what I brought to the table. And so it gives us so much more of a fulsome perspective because once you know that I've had that toxic experience because you've been safe and I've shared that with you, then you have that and you know better how to communicate with me
Right.
to put that story in the background. Yeah, I love that. That's a beautiful way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so, Elissa, you have talked about the work you do with new leaders. You've talked about the team building work that you've done with groups. What are some of the other ways you help your clients at WorkWise Labs?
I also have one on one coaching available. And coaching is just, I mean, I tell everybody, it's like anybody who has been successful, and we all have different ideas of success. But when you start to look at people who have been successful, they have had coaches.
Yeah.
Coaching, I mean, coaching just really helps you to think about slow things down and think more deeply about the things that you're ruminating on. I always say you pluck like one thing out and take that time to really look into it. And anyone who's been successful has had either formal coaching or informal coaching. They've been allowed that space to really dig in and think about something more deeply. And so coaching is just a very important part of leadership. And it is part of the next level leadership program as well, because everybody needs that one-on-one time where it's about you and your experience. So everyone in the next level leadership program also gets coaching sessions as
Oh,
part of
that's
the program.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important. I get coached too. I mean, anybody, I mean, it's so incredibly valuable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Coaches have coaches. There's no question. And I
Yep.
want to toot Alyssa's horn for just a second. For those of you who have maybe experienced coaching in the past, there is an approach to coaching where the coach is more of a um, advice giver, where the coach is telling you what to do. So more of a consulting role than a true coaching role. And there's value in that. I'm not belittling coaches who coach
100%.
away.
Yeah.
But the value of the coaching that Elissa provides is that she's not telling you what to do. She's holding space for you and asking questions so you can figure out what is best for you. It is a much deeper transformation and a much deeper, richer experience than having someone give you the answer, is helping you figure out the answer that fits best in your life because nobody knows you better than you know you. And so, Elissa, I just want to highlight that facet of your coaching because I think it's really important.
Oh, thank you, Becky. You said it perfectly. And I like that that distinction between consulting and coaching. I think that's a very important distinction and both are important
Yeah.
and helpful.
Yeah. So, Alyssa, what is some practical advice that you can give listeners today to help them feel more confident in the workplace? You gave that one nugget that was phenomenal about receiving feedback. Is there others that you can offer?
Yeah, so one one really helpful practical thing that you can do is be a forward facing thinker. So, in the face of that feedback, in the face of seeing the portrait, or at any moment where you're having one of the where you make a mistake or you're have disappointed or feeling stressed about something, instead of asking why, the question why, which is a very past, looking back question, ask what or how instead.
Hmm.
So, for example, if I'm like frustrated with my boss and my boss always talks down to me and I say like, why is my boss always talking down to me? Right? That's thinking about the past. You can flip that to be much more self-aware and to be much more future-focused thinking and say something like, what can I do to get my boss to respect me? How can I go into the next meeting and present myself in a clearer way? And you can kind of see the difference between those questions, right? Why is
Mhm.
my boss always talking down to me? What can I do to change this situation? And so that's a very practical tool. When you find yourself asking yourself why questions, flip the script on yourself and ask what or how questions instead.
Oh,
Simple.
that is great. Yes, incredible, incredibly valuable. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It really helps me.
I'm filing that away for myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Alyssa, I am a big fan of lifelong learning, having spent my entire adult life in the learning field. What is a book or a podcast that you would recommend to listeners? What are you loving right now that you want to share?
So one podcast that I'm loving lately is called IdeaCast
Oh,
by Harvard, the
yes.
Harvard Business Review.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
love that podcast. It's like these little 15, 20-minute bursts of information. I love that podcast from a work perspective. From a fun perspective, I am a longtime listener of This American Life. I don't know if you know that one.
Yes.
It's
Oh, it's
amazing.
beautiful. Yes.
And a lesser known podcast that is just as good is called Heavyweight. I don't know if you've ever
I
heard
don't
it.
know. This is new to me. Great.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's this guy, Jonathan Goldstein. He's so funny. And the title is called Heavyweight because it's a whole podcast about people who walk through life with some like weight that they have, like some regret or something. And he helps you right that
Oh my
wrong or
goodness.
right that regret or like make it
Yeah.
happen. And it's just a really funny, it's poignant, it's smart, and I love it.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Yes, I'm going to check that out. Thank you.
Okay.
And so now, Elissa, tell our listeners where they can find you. We'll have everything linked in the description box below. But if someone wants to learn more about WorkWise Labs, that they want to connect with you, where are you out in the interwebs?
The first easiest place is workwiselabs.com. And that has all of my team building, my next level leadership, and the coaching information on the website and a contact form. So you can always go there. But I'm also, of course, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. So you can always find me there too, either at Elissa Zylbershlag or WorkWise Labs.
Awesome. Well, Elissa, thank you so much for coming on Joyfully Unstoppable. I think we could have talked for another 30 minutes. I just try to
Easily.
keep these episodes short. But what that tells me is we've got to have you back on. So
All
thank
right.
you so much. Your insights today, I know, have inspired and prepared listeners to lead with greater confidence and clarity. Now,
Thank you for having me, Becky.
thank you so much. Now, if this episode spoke to you, I would love for you to share it with a friend who's running on empty. We need more women leading from alignment, not adrenaline. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Next week, I'll be sharing my best tips to regulate your nervous system when you're stressed out. The anxiety that we were talking about earlier today.
Yep.
This is a leadership podcast, but as we move into the holidays and all of the delightful sugar-fueled days to come, you're not going to want to miss it. You can also grab one of our free resources like the Mental Load Reset or the Values Clarification Exercise at womenleadwell.net and linked in the show notes below. Remember, joyful, sustainable, and authentic leadership is possible, and you deserve to enjoy every minute of it. Until next time, I'm Becky Ham, and this is Joyfully Unstoppable.